Oh, and it gets hard late in the
Is
day.
it a
I'm
real
not sure.
cigarette or what?
No, it's not. No, that's what I'm saying. It's an herbal cig. It's just like what they use on like TV shows and stuff. So it's a prop cigarette. So it doesn't really even feel
And
like one.
what does it taste?
Like a little bit like nothing and a little bit kind of like all that stuff tastes. Like whenever there's like an herbal something, it sort of is like a bit like like yeah,
Like
like that.
Harry Potter jellies or whatever they're called in English.
And it's actually funny. This brand is a UK brand that they ended up using on Mad Men. The legend, and it's probably true, is that the cast was super gung ho. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna smoke real cigarettes on set. We're gonna be like make it really like the '50s." And like after the first like day, everyone was like, "Oh my god!" Like no,
That's
no, no.
disgusting.
Let's use the fake ones.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida, sacrificarse hasta la muerte en los campos de batalla de todos los continentes del mundo.
Live from West Berlin, it's the committee program sponsored by Cadre Cigarettes, the national cigarette of Equatorial Fredonia, and starring Aran Shadari, Julia Doubleday, Forrest, Lovette, Fiamma, Meli, Xhevat, Kastrati, and yours truly, Jacopo Castelletti. And now, a man who is not allowed to smoke during the show anymore because it wakes up the baby, Aran Shadari.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jacopo. Yes, and that's true. That's true. We have guests in the cohabitating in our office at the committee headquarters, and so we are trying not to smoke in the office, and we are trying not to wake the baby. These are things that we are trying, although we still have contractual obligations with our sponsor. Of course, quality is what makes Cadre special. Quantity is what makes it yours. The quality that can only come from the care with which Cadre selects tobacco for their cigarettes, and the quantity that can only be guaranteed in complex multi-year economic projects. Cadre, good and many, like Fredonia itself, and sponsors of the committee program. Thank you for being with us tonight. We have a great show lined up. We do have Ellie Mae O'Hagan and Julia Doubleday coming on. I think, hope, and expect we're going to connect a call with South Africa to hear about some things going on there. That'll either be this week or next week. We have a global news rodeo. We have polling galore. We have things for you. Despite my looking like 1973 Richard Nixon and 1972 Richard Nixon, as referenced in the famous Richard Nixon sketch. Okay, so we're gonna run the British opening thing, and we're gonna do one of these 100 objects things. All right, let's get the colonialism happening. Let's do that.
And now, the history of a run in 100 objects. Yes. Quite.
Yes, I have two great objects, both from the same era of committee/Arun's life, which is the White House days. One actually is just in passing because I was just at a bar mitzvah and it was just Passover season. And it's my White House yarmulke from the White House Seders that I was lucky enough to help get to the lead. But that's actually not what I wanted to talk to you about, although it is a good historical object. What I want to talk about, look, because there's many things at the White House that are not the best. Some of the coups that come out of it. This is not even what we're talking about. But I even mean like you'd think things in service of the president and the richest country in the world would somehow be the best, But actually, the White House is kind of a dump, like I've said before. It's kind of falling apart. All of these things. There are a couple of things that are the best. Two or three. I think one of them we'll actually devote a whole segment to, which is the staff secretary office, which I think is a smart way to organize things. Number two is the eggnog that they serve at the holiday seasons. It is very alcoholic and very delicious, and it actually is just absolutely the best. And the third are mini skeds. Many of us have busy lives. We're on the road a lot. We're traveling. Many of us are attending activities, conferences, protests, marches, many things that are complex and don't always have a stage manager to manage them, which all of us theater kids, this is what we like, is to actually have a person with the headphones making it happen. When you can't have a person with the headphones making it happen, you can have a mini sked, because a schedule that you fold up is one thing, but a schedule that not only has the important information like this one does, everyone's phone numbers and like the weather and a breakdown of what's happening thing by thing. This will happen to be trip of the president to Holland, Michigan in July 15th, 2010. Not only does it have, say, the drive time from a photo line with LG Chem employees to local elected officials at a tent at Compact Power Incorporated. Anyway, we're getting in the weeds here. The point is that it is made small enough that it fits right in your pocket. And you can have that with you all day, reference the schedule, know where you are, and not have to keep asking, where are we going? How long does it take? And you're like, but it's in the schedule. I sent it to your phone. I gave you this printout. It was in your hotel. Whatever it is, a mini schedule, a schedule that can fit in your pocket and maybe has, something a little stiffer on the outside. Doesn't need to. The lighter the outside, the more staples you're going to want to put on the side to give it some sort of backbone, to give it a spine. But that's what I wanted to share with you. This is a mini sked, and this is how the White House does it. And I think it's, I think it's a good way to do it. I keep trying to make a joke about how the White House is really good at a few things, and Coos keeps being the one that I keep thinking of, So look, whether you're the Dulles brothers or whether you're a stationaire, mini skeds. On with the show.
This is the Global News Rodeo with Arun Chowdhury and Forrest Lovette.
Hi, welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Arun Chowdhury, and this is your Global News Rodeo, a roundup of world events as curated by the show's own Forrest Lovette and sometimes editorialized by me. Let's go. Item 1, 100 days, update on the war in Ukraine. Nothing cute in the title, Forrest, and that's okay. I think that's okay. Let's just plunge ahead. Al Jazeera is reporting on the 100th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Here's some key developments in the last weeks. On May 18th, the European Commission announced a 220 billion euro plan to wean themselves off of Russian oil imports in the next 5 years. On May 23rd, Ukraine convicted the first Russian soldier of war crimes and sentenced him to life in prison. On May 25th, President Zelensky rebuked former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Sorry, I think he might have just turned 99 this last week also, for suggesting Ukraine should surrender land to Russia, citing this was akin to the policy of appeasement before World War II. On May 28th, Russia, in telephone talks with French and German leaders, agreed to facilitate Ukrainian grain exports on the condition that sanctions against them are lifted. And as of June 1st, Russian troops were reported to hold the city center of Severodonetsk in eastern Ukraine. That is in the middle of Luhansk. Look, we're getting a lot of information and sort of breathless and a lot of the sort of technical kind of aspects of which weapons are being used. We do know that a lot of people continue to die every day. We do know that it's grinding into some kind of stalemate. And I think we do know that the real strategy of anyone looking at this has to be to see if the European/NATO alliance, whatever you want to call it, will hold together when it's cold and when Russian gas becomes more important to them. Already right now, you can see the kind of mixed results and how hard it is to kind of deglobalize the energy market. It is clear that everyone involved has the resources to keep this going into next year. And I think it's more and more clear that what we are seeing on the ground is what we are going to see, say, through December. Some folks might say that they're planning big things in the summer on both sides. I don't see it happening, but I'm certainly not an expert, nor are any of us here at your committee program, but we know more than the average bear. Item 2, one bird with one stone. Turkey changes its name. Deutsche Welle is reporting that Turkey's applied and officially been granted a name change by the United Nations, going from Turkey to Turkiye, spelled Turkiye, Turkiye with the umlaut U, and pronounced Turkiye. The country wants to distance themselves from the bird and to have a cultural rebranding. I think that's very fair. It's very odd how the bird and the country have the same name, right? Like we can all wrap our heads around that being a strange thing. Turkish President Erdogan said, Turkey is the best representation and expression of the Turkish people's culture, civilization, and values. But did you know? Turkey isn't the only country to recently make an about face. In 2020, the Netherlands formally dropped the name Holland in an attempt to push away from the drug use and prostitution which are associated with Amsterdam, which is in the North Holland province. And of course, in 2019, the Republic of Macedonia became the Republic of North Macedonia. And in 2016, the Czech government officially changed the name from the Czech Republic to Czechia for international markability purposes. I will say all of this is well and fine and good, but the North Macedonians did not want to change, and they did change because this was supposed to actually start the EU process that they have every reason and expectation of being on with Albania. And once again, I would call on the EU to take this seriously. Y'all promised. They didn't want to do it, and they did it. They went, they found a negotiation, they did the thing. There should be a reward at the end of that. Item 3. Mind the gap between workers and employers, London tube strike. Socialist workers reporting on another planned walkout by the station staff of the London Underground. Members of the National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, or RMT, have scheduled a strike on June 6th, their third 24-hour walkout since March. The strikes are in response to London's plan to slash jobs of city workers in a COVID emergency funding deal with the government. Sadie, a station worker, was interviewed about RMT's plan, saying, "I think we urgently need a program of escalating strikes that is spelled out in advance so people know we are serious about resisting the cuts. The bosses have shown no signs of backing off. Instead, they are plowing ahead with specific plans for how to make cuts in stations. The plans are brutal, with some stations facing a nearly 50% cut to the numbers of customer service assistants. It's good that the union has called another tube strike on June 6th, but it won't be enough to stop the attacks." Item 4. Presidente Petro Posibilidad, Colombia election heads to runoff. The Guardian is reporting on the first round of the Colombian presidential election, which saw former mayor of Bogota and leftist Gustavo Petro and conservative populist Rodolfo Hernandez. Petro received the most votes at 40%, but fell short of the necessary 50% to prevent a second round. June 19th is now set for the runoff of the anti-establishment candidates in a contentious and polarizing political climate. Sounds familiar, sounds like everywhere, sounds like everything. While Hernandez runs on populist appeals to the nation's worker, Petro has promised tax reform and vows to change how Colombia deals with its drug cartels. If elected in June, Gustavo Petro would make history on two different fronts. On one front, he would become the first president on the left side of the aisle, while also making history with his running mate. On the ticket with Petro is Francia Marquez, who, if elected, would be the first black female vice president in the country's history. Amid social and economic unrest, consultant Silvana Amaya said of the election, Colombians are demanding a change of the socioeconomic paradigm that will dictate the political policies for the next 4 years. But most importantly, a change that restores their hope. Hope for better days, for a better social environment, with less corruption and with more equality. This is one we're keeping a close eye on. We'll also be talking about in the polling. Pink wave, y'all.
Ciao and welcome back to our polling update here at the Polling Channel, brought to you by the Committee Program. Looking to the Western Hemisphere per America elects, Gustavo Petro, left to center, and right-wing Rodolfo Hernandez have advanced to the runoff in the presidential election. This will be exciting to see if the Pink Front continues in Latin America. In Turkey, per RBTR poll, we initially see opposition candidates potentially coming ahead of ever-present President Erdogan at 55 to 45. At the Polling Channel, we aren't unsure if this is rain or if someone is... Anyway, we remain skeptical. In Finland, the Talos Tutkimus poll has conservatives rising, although whether they can disrupt the Social Democratic coalition is an open doubt. NATO skepticism could be an interesting weather pattern too. Look at here. In the United States of America, YouGov has Democrats running ahead of Republicans by a few points generically, and this is wrong. This is wrong and stupid and incorrect and ill-advised. The committee program stands behind our prediction of a Democratic rout at between 25 and 33 seats swinging to Republicans. YouGov, we need more than whatever this is. And Forrest, shame on you for bringing it up. And finally, in Seoul, the capital of the regular Republic of Korea, with 100% of the votes counted, Oh Si-hoon, the conservative from the PPP, has decisively defeated liberal Soo Young-gil of the DPK at 59% to 39%. Mazel tov to all concerned, except for Oh Si-hoon. He doesn't seem great. And from the staff here at the Polling Channel, thank you so much for watching, and stay safe out there.
Pongan atención.
El nuevo CAF granulado.
Es el nuevo CAF, definitivamente instantáneo.
El nuevo CAF granulado tiene poca cafeína. ¿Y su sabor? Pruébelo.
Es CAF granulado y reconforta sanamente.
Nuevo CAF granulado. Reconforta sanamente porque tiene poca cafeína.
Oh, Dios.
Advance, el primer cigarrillo de bajos índices. Algún día, todos lo serán.
Jesus, I need to get some sleep, or at least look like I've gotten more sleep, because I look like Richard Nixon. That's what I look like. And not like 1972 Richard Nixon. I look like 1973 Richard Nixon. You see what I'm saying?
This is Cross-Atlantic Crosstalk.
Hi, and welcome back to the committee program. And we have the Cross-Atlantic Crosstown Gang. That is Ellie Mae O'Hagan, the director of Class Think Tank, and Julia Doubleday, the deputy director of Committee LLC, deputy host of the show. And what else would you describe yourself as these days, Julia?
A person who likes to watch horror movies during the day.
Yes.
And we have that. We will curve into a bit of that, if by horror you mean hero-worshipping American biographies, which is just like not only the only movies we make, but the only books we read. It just has to
weird
be.
Pivot.
I'm getting ahead of ourselves.
Weird pivot.
Getting ahead of ourselves. But today we're actually doing a cultural dip, and we will be talking about The Dropout. Of course, the Elizabeth Holmes docudrama on Hulu. I think it was Hulu who put it out. But before we dove into that, I wanted to ask Ellie Mae O'Hagan about Boris Johnson. How much trouble is he in? I feel like it's the same thing I asked you last time you were here, so I apologize for that, except now I'm hearing numbers. So when you start seeing people saying, I know of at least 58 Tories who will vote, for a no-confidence vote, then you start to think maybe there are 78 or maybe there are none.
So I think one thing that's interesting that happened this weekend is that when he went to St. Paul's Cathedral for the Jubilee service, he was booed. And I think that will have really freaked out the Tories, because for them to lose the royal crowd, the royal lovers,
that's not great.
That's a problem. So that would be like people who, I don't know, have 70 American flags in their home, booing Trump or something. I don't know what do you know what I mean? So
that's an average American.
Yeah.
70 American flags.
Approaching. Yeah. Some of them are blue for some reason. It's all a long story.
I was going to say one, but then I was like, no, loads of people have one.
Literally, my parents,
here it's quite unusual.
When I lived in Texas, you had to subscribe to a service. And if you didn't, the neighbors would look down on you, to a Boy Scout service where you paid them a certain amount of money to put up your flag.
It was
and check
only
on
when
it.
I started traveling abroad that I realized we were weirdly patriotic.
I will say that Hungarians
didn't know
love
their
flags
own their own national anthems. When I was like, oh, that's weird. I know 12 patriotic American songs.
Well, it's quite like Wales in that respect. We love flags and patriotism, and we have lots of songs.
We got a drag on yours, to be fair. But sorry, we interrupted. You were talking about Tories and it looking pretty bad because even the royals are yelling at them, or the royal crowd.
Yeah, but in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember when it was, Theresa May, there was all the letters.
I have not heard that name in a long time. Thank you for bringing that
It's like a Star Wars moment.
She there was a vote of no confidence about her, and she won it. And I think that same thing's going to happen again. I think my prediction is that they might get the letters. I think they probably will get the letters, and then he'll win it.
That means the
No.
proceedings begin, you mean by the letters, and then they
Yes.
won't get the votes to make it
Why,
actually
why is it called the
collapse.
letters?
I
So
like
the Tories have got this group called the 1922 Committee, and
Jesus.
they're essentially
That sounds like exactly
the,
what it is, isn't it?
yeah. I've been in Parliament when the 1922 Committee is meeting, and they all wear like a white tie, which is the fanciest dress code
Of course.
there is. And they're all like, you know, kind of cartoons of like fat cats, so like got big bellies, they're all like that. And then they all go like, when one of them says something and they all agree with, they all bang on the table and go, yeah. It's a bizarre spectacle. Anyway, they kind of make all the decisions about the Conservative Parliamentary Party, and the rules. So there's rules, like each party has its own internal rules about how to challenge leadership and so on. And the Tories' rules are, if you, like 45 MPs have to write a letter to the 1922 committee saying they've lost confidence in Boris Johnson.
Mm.
I'm not sure whether it's always 45 or whether it's a portion of like your majority. I'm not sure. I think maybe it might be half
It's the
your
spirit
majority.
of 45 because of the war.
Probably. And so, and it's, they don't, MPs don't have to go public, so no one knows precisely how many letters have
So this
been
is
sent.
a way to sort of exercise semi-public pressure without it being like still being anonymous on leadership.
Yeah. So, but yeah, obviously, like rumors are swirling, and journalists are saying they're going to reach 45, and some journalists are saying they're not going to reach 45. Obviously, it's all like, you know, MPs are all briefing the journalists that they're friendly with, and they have their own reasons for doing it. So I think it's quite hard to know really until it happens. And yeah, and I think they will come to the conclusion, which is the right conclusion, that there is not really anyone that can replace Boris Johnson that they would be happy with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only person who I think would make a half-decent leader is this guy called Jeremy Hunt, who is, like, more kind of on the David Cameron end of the party, the more sort of liberal end. And that is not, like... That's just not where the Tory party is at the moment. They're on the kind of more Trump end.
Rough and tumble.
Yeah. So I think that... And, like... The other one is like Liz Truss, but she's like, who's foreign secretary, but
she's getting a lot of camera time by, running out to
and that's intentional, but she's quite mad. Like, she's got some weird eccentric. She did this whole thing about like British ham a while ago. You know, like she's sort of a bit of an oddball. So I think they kind of maybe worry that she won't win an election, and I think they would be right. So I think that's why and Boris Johnson will say to them, vote me out if you want, but I've never lost an election I've ran in. And, like, I think they'll be like, all right.
Tell us more about the British ham.
That is a Brexit thing. So she was like, oh, we've got the finest ham, you know, like, that's the new Britain. Now we've left the EU.
The finest
we can,
ham.
like,
that's the new slogan for Britain.
Send his widow
or it was
a ham.
like cheese,
Finest
anyway.
ham.
It was cheese, actually.
I've never
It was
known
a
a
speech
country-
about cheese. She
and
did
no
a big
offense,
speech about cheese.
Ellie, but I've just never
To
known
me,
a
this
country to
feels
have
like-
such horrible food and be so proud of it. It's just crazy. It's batshit crazy.
I worry
I quite
that
like our
this
food.
whole thing...
It's dodgy.
Oh yeah,
Keeps
and
you
we
warm.
can talk about this. There's a lot to unpack in terms of British food. But this whole thing seems to me like an opportunity for Boris Johnson just to put everything behind him. Like the vote doesn't work, he doesn't kicked out, and he's like, yeah, we had that debate. Whatever,
Yeah.
the party, who had a beer, who could even remember anymore? But we had a vote about it, and that's the end of it, and I'm okay, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that I guess, like, could have happened for Theresa May, but she did end up standing down. But I guess, like, she had to stand down because she just couldn't pass anything that she wanted to pass. So she sort of had
What
to...
a concept.
Yeah.
She was just trying to
yes.
get Brexit done.
She was trying and failing. So I think, like... So yeah, I think that's what he would hope, is that it will be put to bed. But, I mean, who knows? Like, our next election's 2024. Ew, that's a long time in politics. Like,
I don't know, man. That's just around the corner. I'm worried about it already.
but think about like all of the stuff that's happened in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like a war, a pandemic, like, 2 years ago, Boris Johnson seemed like absolutely, invincible.
Invincible, just a machine.
So, like, who's to say that in the next 2 years he won't claw that back?
Or
you just
die.
don't know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who we're not sure if they will claw back, although I do hear she has a boyfriend, we are going to talk about the Amanda Holmes bio.
No, she has a husband.
Husband? Did she marry this young guy?
She got married to an heir of some fortune, and I just...
Who's young, right?
I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him.
We are here to talk about the Dropout, the Hulu 8-part, should have been 7, but it was 8, and that's fine. We can talk about that series about Elizabeth Holmes, the rise and fall of Theranos. It was first brought to my attention by Julia, who was sending me all kinds of clips of
I really just sent you the one of her dancing.
The dancing, which is, I think, is a famous one that was moving around. And then Ellie was like, are you all checking this out? And so then it became a natural to talk about it. I do think it's interesting in terms of these kind of, especially these sort of tech bio documentaries that both condemn and exalt this kind of culture. One thinks of The Social Network, etc. And there's also lots of other dynamics to it. There's a lot that's interesting about it. And I would just definitely want to hear what you all thought first.
Who goes first? You have to choose.
Julia, you go first because you brought it to my attention first.
Okay, so I feel like we all maybe kind of agree on this, which is that the show itself, I feel like it definitely hit all of the narrative points it needed to hit, but at the same time, it wasn't that great of a show. But the thing that really made it great was Amanda Seyfried as Elizabeth Holmes, who, by the way, I thought was bad casting before watching the show because I didn't see it. I don't think they look similar. But she was just so good at looking and acting completely fucking
And then
nuts.
the voice was freakish.
The voice, yeah, doing the voice and also like kind of just holding all this like tension in her shoulders and like having a weird robot affect to her and the way they dressed her.
Robot, but also still being a loser. We talked about this a
and
bit,
also
right?
like gritting her teeth and like the big stare and also Naveen Andrews, who was Sunny Balwani.
He was good.
Also great. Yeah, they were both great. Honestly, their horrible toxic relationship, I'm just rooting for them. I want them to get back together. They're obviously meant to be. I mean, there's just no fucking way that this new,
this hot air, new whatever,
himbo
Habsburg kid, whatever it is.
husband that she married to have a baby with is going to be able to keep up with her. She's going to murder him and chop him up into a bunch of little pieces. She needs to get back with Sunny. And nobody else is going to make her happy, okay?
I will say for me, this was my third time go around on this story, and I was a little worried about that because I first listened to the audiobook Bad Blood by the Wall Street Journal guy who's featured
Oh, you did
a
listen
lot
to
in
it. It was like based on that. So yeah, you already knew all
and
of that.
then I also listened to another thing about it. Both, I think, were audio.
The podcast.
Maybe not this podcast, though, a different podcast, but about the scandal. And so I was worried that it would be the third time, but actually in that way it paralleled something very interesting from my youth, which was, if you remember the scandal with Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco on Long Island, which was a scandal with a high school person, an auto mechanic, and it was a whole situation. They made 3 made-for-TV movies about it. And so by the time the third one came around, it was a little old hat. Everyone knew the story. But Drew Barrymore played Amy Fisher in the last one, which for a TV movie was huge. It was like, whoa, like Drew Barrymore's in it. And so it was like, that's bad casting. She doesn't look like her, but like she did somehow inhabit something about it. One thing in all 3 of those that I missed that I want to know, and maybe no one knows, but it's what I want to know, is I want to know what she does and doesn't know. Is she good at the science? Is she not good at the science? Sometimes it's like, obviously she's okay at it. Obviously she knows nothing about it. She wasn't like kicked out of Stanford, right? Like, dropped out.
She was a little sociopathic baby. No matter how smart you are, like her mentor, the one woman mentor, was like, you don't get to skip a bunch of steps, meaning you have to actually get this degree to understand what you're talking about is not actually possible. And I also want to say there's definitely a very gendered aspect to how she got to where she was, which is that all of the mentors that helped her advance her career were a bunch of like, I guess, starstruck men who were like, oh, she's
like, whoa, a chick.
a blonde lady's talking to me,
yeah.
and she's smart, and she's read a book, and like, you know, just went against everything they could ever conceptualize as a woman being someone who is smart and has blonde hair. And that sort of like, you know, faux mentorship that happens in all of these industries of like, actually, I'm just attracted to this person, but I'm going to pretend that I'm her mentor. It was pretty clear that it was gendered because every single woman expert who enters the story
was like, yeah,
is like,
no, this doesn't sound right. Yeah, yeah.
She's full of shit. This doesn't even make sense. But she constantly had this string of much older men who were clearly had some sort of fascination with her. Even like Schultz, the old
I mean, not even Schultz. I think especially Schultz, because he just sort of carries this bullshit weight of many different types of authority, right?
Yes,
like he represents.
I like the idea of this young, brilliant, pretty woman, and she wants me to be her mentor. And I think that like, it does sort of. It's interesting because we have so much judgment for like sex workers and sugar babies and all this stuff, but like the dynamic of getting ahead as a woman, it often contains components of that needing to attach yourself to more powerful men or gain the interest of more powerful men. And there is a component of it that is based on how you look and how you present yourself, and whether you present yourself as someone who needs their help. And these things, it occurs along a spectrum as opposed to being just something that certain bad women do. And I think that's like an aspect of her story that like they didn't exactly delve into, but it was definitely there, especially also her main relationship, even with Sunny Balwani. It's very clear, you know, he was like 30 years older than her, whatever. He met her very inappropriately when she was like 18,
She was
19.
pretty young, and he was,
And
like a
again, that
middle-aged
whole relationship was like, he was in love with her. He was obsessed with her. And the only reason Theranos, she didn't get removed as CEO was that she lied, pretended that he was just a business associate who trusted and believed in her. In fact, it was her boyfriend. And that's how she continued to stay in charge and kept the scam rolling. So that was a big, interesting gendered piece of how she got to where she was.
I want to put some of it on the storytellers, though. Like, nobody thinks we're smart enough to know the science, I feel like. So it's like, how close were they? Like, was this machine a few prototypes off? Was it totally should have been scrapped? This company doesn't even have any ideas. You know, like I'm sort of super curious, even after having consumed all of this content.
No,
about it, you know?
I feel like they were very explicitly clear that they were nowhere close to being able to do. She conceptualized an idea sort of the same way if I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could travel back in time? And then, you know, tasked a bunch of engineers with building this thing that she had never demonstrated was possible.
But there were sort of invade Russia
build it.
moments, right? Where it's like, hey, can we use 10 drops? And she's like, no, 1 drop. And it's like, well, would 10 drops just have been the answer?
No, you're not remembering the show right. They do switch to using 10 drops. Because the 1 drop doesn't work at all, they use the 10 drops, and then they adulterate it. They put water into it so that it's more blood, and that's why the test came out incorrectly. What they were saying was never possible. Everybody who had expertise in the actual science of how it worked said it wasn't possible. And when her first idea, you know, when she lays off the first rounds of engineers, they are actually trying to solve the problem that she gave them in the first place. The second round of engineers are like, what if we just use this kind of existing technology and kind of make it work for this idea? And it never does. I mean, like, it never even close to works.
Much money and energy. Ellie, what did you think of it generally? And also, what do you think of the issues surrounding it? Both these are different questions, and I think you may have different.
I totally agreed with everything that Julia just said, so I'm not going to repeat any of that. I guess the bit about, like, the men and their relationship to Elizabeth Holmes, what I picked up on to do with that was the whole bit with Alan Ruck playing the sort of executive at Walgreens Pharmacy. Mm-hmm. Love Alan Ruck, by the way.
Yeah, great.
And he's very much like, this is how the kids are doing it these days. You've just got to hop on board. And I thought the role that she played for these men was like, they kind of were aware that their like time was over, and
you
they
can come
were being,
backstage for the last tour. You know, it's like, you're still part of the gang.
Yeah, and they're being replaced by like young people who are doing things that they don't understand, and who also, as far as they perceive it, also have like more socially liberal values. Like, I guess it was 2008, so Obama just got elected, and like, I don't know, maybe like in this country,
Meritocratic
like,
feelings were up. People were leaning in, as you'll recall.
yeah, and like things like LGBT rights were becoming more like mainstream and
What
accepted.
a time to be alive.
Yeah.
Truly,
it was the best of times, apart from the slight inconvenience of the global meltdown.
Best of times and the worst of times, you might say.
Yeah. As someone once said.
Has anyone said that?
So I sort of saw, like, in my mind, I think that these old men saw her as their route into sort of staying relevant, and also what she offered them was like a safe way to be involved in that culture, because she was blonde, she was white, she was actually already rich before she took over, before she launched Theranos. So she was like already sort of in their orbit, you know, in their sort of class. And basically she flattered their egos and like didn't challenge the sort of male dominance of business. Instead, she just kind of did this like yes we can style kind of like feminism, like the lean in
identity
kind of feminism.
politics.
This just
sure.
land.
I mean, and she never hired women to be around her except for like two that immediately were like, "This is a scam," and I quit. There was
the designer quitting was quite a nice scene, I thought, actually.
Yeah, and I think like there's a safety in that for those men, right? That they're probably a bit afraid and alarmed by like this kind of culture, this sort of youth culture, I suppose.
Move
they don't
fast, break
understand.
things. Yeah.
Especially because it's manifesting through the internet, which like loads of them just like never used in any significant way. Because probably by the time the internet became popularized, they all had secretaries, you know. So like assistants. So you can imagine that they feel like afraid and threatened by like this new stuff that's happening. And she was like this kind of, you know, chamomile balm that they could sort of, you know, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Like, it's just going to be like, and, you know, she sort of deliberately, I think, played up this idea that kind of weird, gross interplay of like sort of sex object and daughter.
Yes, totally.
As well.
100%.
And I think that was very like, that was where she is like very, very good, is like, her ability to do that to people, to like, to know how to manipulate people. And I thought that was definitely the bit that I noticed. And that came through most in the scenes with Alan Ruck, where he was like pushing Walgreens to sign with Theranos on no evidence, because he was afraid of like...
Right, the lab guy is like, please, just 1 second in the lab.
Yeah.
Like, just 1 minute with the lab equipment, because they're obviously lying about everything.
Can I just see it?
Yeah.
Can I just see it?
He was very good at being frustrated man number 3, I thought.
The madman guy. He was
Yeah. But have you seen have you rewatched any interviews with Elizabeth Holmes at the time? Because now, knowing what we know now, if you go back, viewers, I recommend this, go back now and watch Elizabeth Holmes being interviewed on like mainstream American television.
Oh, the HBO documentary has a lot of that footage on it. That was one of the other things that I saw.
It's so obvious that she's full of shit. That's what the crazy thing is. Like, there's an interview with her with Good Morning America.
Word salad, yeah.
And like, they're walking around Theranos, and the host is like, of course no one's actually seen this technology. And then she says to Elizabeth Holmes in like the sit-down interview, "Oh, some people say that your technology doesn't work. What do you say to them?" And Elizabeth Holmes says, "Well, when you invent something new, there should be questions." And that's her answer. It's like, it's so obvious that that it's all a lie, and it's kind of crazy. It was like in plain sight. Yeah.
Honestly, what's interesting too, though, is that there's so much of this in Silicon Valley, and this one blew up to be such a big deal, but in a lot of ways, I was talking online to someone about this the other day. It's not really that different from what Elon Musk is doing, right? Like, his business is constantly claiming to invent stuff that they haven't invented. And I mean, a couple of his big claims, you know, one, he's going to invent this super tunnel thing, this super fast public transit thing. the Hyperloop has
That's
never existed in
We know,
any
like,
way, shape, or
Hyperloop.
form. Now it's taking the form of a tunnel underground for Teslas that is a one-way tunnel. You have to wait till everyone's done going this way before people can go this way. So he invented tunnels, but worse.
He invented guns for cars. It's like shooting them through tunnels, you know?
His cars blow up, catch on fire. We all know this. They have automated systems that like basically don't work if you don't install like a software update. So like all of a sudden your really high-tech screen interface that you use to run your car, you can just stop working.
It's kind of terrifying. I don't like it. Yeah.
The fully automated vehicle thing is a motherfucking lie. You can put me on the record with that. It will never happen. They have been trying to do it for decades. A decade ago, they said it would be ready in a decade. A decade before that, they said it would be ready in a decade. The reason it doesn't work is that people are not computer programs. They don't interact with the world in a way that a computer program can effectively predict.
In all
the thing that
situations,
engineers keep saying is like, well, basically the issue is the people. Like sometimes people do
Yeah,
things
it's
and we
also
can't predict
AI
what's
is
going to
not
happen.
what people think it is. Yeah,
AI
right.
isn't what people think it is at all. It's and that's a really big issue. Actually, I think, not to get too far off topic, but when we're talking about climate change and we're talking about all these other issues, people are like, "Oh, our technology is so advanced now." I'm like, a Tesla literally just ran headfirst into a private jet the other day because they tried to set their Tesla to come drive over to
That's
them.
kind of beautiful, though. That's
And-
the Waco of car accidents. you
Yeah,
don't know
and
who to
the
root
and the
for,
people
you
in
know?
the comments, the Musk defenders were like, "This is good. This is training data, so they know not to run into an airplane." And I'm like, "Well, I know not to run into an airplane, so I don't know if I need this fully
Right.
automated."
How much training is it going to
fucking
need? How many
shit.
different kinds of planes
so
should we
that's
put out on the
two
runway for
things
this?
he's claimed to invent that he hasn't invented. What else? He thinks he's going to go live on Mars. No, he's not. That's not going to happen. He can't even, it's never been shown that we can actually terraform another planet. We can even terraform the fucking Earth. So 3 lies. Last lie, he's going to put a chip in your brain to...
Oh my God, the poor monkeys. This is terrible. What's been...
Yes, a chip in your brain so that you can, I don't know, like have Google inside of your brain or fucking whatever.
Yeah. He's been
what he's
torturing
actually
monkeys with the
doing
prototype.
is that they're torturing monkeys, putting weird
Horrible.
stuff in their brains, and then they all just die of infections because nobody.
And I want to
can
say
actually do
Elizabeth
this.
Holmes did none of those things, right? She just thought big. She just thought big and asked for enormous amounts of money. And in that way, you have to respect her. It's not like I need 10 million. She's like, I need $1 billion of your dollars. That's the
But it's
deal.
just,
That's what they're trained to do, right?
Long can Elon Musk get away with doing this? It seems like forever. So
Well,
if we're going to
he
talk
did
about
what
the
she didn't
sexism-
do, which is after a certain number of years, you're supposed to just jump onto the next thing, right? It's like Square, then Twitter. You have to do multiples of these things so that your money is coming in from different places and you're not tied into one thing. That's when the lawyers can just keep you alive forever. I feel like she didn't do that.
Most of his cars
She believed
that
in
he
her
sold
thing.
have been recalled. He is a fucking scam artist.
I suppose he made his billions with PayPal initially, and then that's given him this insane cushion to be in.
Yeah, Rich Boy Mike's finance tool. Like news at 11.
Whereas Elizabeth Holmes was she'd bet
She had a
everything on
dream.
this
She had
one.
an idea.
Do you think she actually ever believed it could work? One of the things that
I don't know.
I noticed about the Dropout was I was like, she must have something
Actually,
wrong
I
with her
wanna say something else,
to want to do this, because it was so stressful. She was playing everybody off against one another and lying and lying and lying.
It's
and I was
it's because this is a biography that is force-fed to American kids, right? This idea, especially with tech, of just, it's the idea, it's just the hustle, it's just as much effort to put behind it. Things can always work themselves out. You can always find a solution if and it's just this weird idea that's just sold to people from very young, kindergartners who code. It is just if you just hustle, whatever it is will come true. When we see over and over again, people are successful, start successful. I mean, you don't need me to tell
I
you this.
think she believed it could work, not through any of her own efforts, but Arun is saying, I think, they sort of openly showed her having the Bill Gates poster on the wall and that kind of thing. Like, her goal was never to improve society. It was to be a billionaire specifically. Like, I want to have a lot of money. That's my goal. And in order to have a lot of money, her thought was like, I just need to invent something.
And not even for the money, right? For the points. I want 1 billion points.
I think the money too. I think the money too. The money, the power, whatever. She wanted to be another titan of society. And she just thought, if I just have an idea, she was a fucking kid. Like, a lot of dumbass kids when they're 19 are like, I want to be a billionaire. She had an idea, and her thought was like, as long as I can get the money, then they can just invent this thing. I don't think she ever thought she had the scientific expertise to do it.
It's like people who have ideas for movies. I have an idea for a movie. You're like, no, the movie is everything else. That's everything else. The idea for the movie is not even a thing. But thank you for your idea.
I think that she like felt entitled. It was like a bit in the same way that I felt about like Anna Delvey in that Inventing Anna series. That it was like these were two people who feel that there is something off kilter with the universe, that they're not fantastically rich, so therefore like they can do whatever they want because they're redressing the balance.
I think a lot of Americans feel that way.
But
I feel that way.
It's the Steve Jobs thing also, right? It's just this hero. It's this weird thing, right? It's like if you are an asshole to enough people, it means you have determination and grit. and somehow that means that you deserve to be successful.
If you build the infrastructure and if you just have the balls to like get the money.
If you just scream at enough people,
you're
right?
Gonna, at some point you're just going to end up rich, I guess.
Like at this movie, any of ways the story could have been, if somehow they had killed it, figured out the thing, and become successful, the movie wouldn't have changed any of the scenes. It's just the reading of it would be different, and especially to the American audience, that's how it would be fed to them, right? All the first rounds of people getting fired in shady circumstances, it wouldn't even be covered up. It would just be like, and that's what happens to get to the top. Like, you have to have that kind of grit, determination, and toughness. Fire your partners, stab people in the eye, you know?
I did cry when Stephen Fry died.
When Stephen
Fry... was very sad.
Yo, that was
and he was
sad.
great.
I thought they handled that very well.
Genuinely disappointed, right? How could anyone be so disappointed so many times in so many episodes? And I was like, that takes talent.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, I thought they handled that really well, actually, because it could have been quite gratuitous, but actually I thought it was quite sensitive. I feel like it's sort of something that maybe his sort of family members might feel like okay when they watch it, as opposed to like it wasn't. It could have been really exploitative. But it wasn't. I thought it was handled in quite a sensitive way, which is good.
I agree. And you definitely see why he's at the end of his fucking rope with this shit.
And it reminds me, because, thinking about the wife's character in it, it is also nice in a Shakespearean sense, however, that one of the driving things, especially in the second half of the drama, is spite and revenge. These are things that we like, right? It's not like truth and justice. It's spite and revenge. And I think that those are
me going. Yeah,
that's what keeps us all going, and I think it's important.
When I went to work for Beto in 2018, it was just pure spitefulness towards Ted Cruz. That's why I kept going into the office. It was the only thing. I mean, God bless Beto, but like, really hate Ted Cruz.
I just had to recuse myself from a Ted Cruz meeting, actually.
Why?
I just felt like I shouldn't be there. This is when I was just in DC.
Kind of Ted Cruz meeting? Oh, a meeting with...
we're doing the things. Clients.
Yeah.
I actually... Just like, there's going to be another one of these in 2 years of a different company doing something different? Right? I mean, we agreed. The only thing... This was just sort of like Lady Serial Killer was the only thing that was interesting.
Speaking of spite, I only want one thing.
What do you want?
Elon Musk expose where everyone realizes how dumb he is.
You know what? I mean, okay, kettlefish here. Maybe. I'm opening, not kettlefish. I'm opening, what's the word? A can of worms. I'm opening a can of worms.
Oh boy.
By saying this, but I think in 2 years there will be a documentary about the Depp Heard trial.
For sure.
That will
basically the OJ one, probably.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think.
Yeah. Were people consuming that full gulp as they were in the US and the UK?
It wasn't
being
as
that
big.
It was live streamed, like,
but
Macy's Bananas.
Yeah, it wasn't as big, but like it was in the news every day. It wasn't like something that everyone was talking about, but like most people were aware of it, and like most people did swallow the Depp story. Like most people did believe his version of events. And
yeah,
like,
it could be part of a larger documentary about how like troll farms and misinformation and yada yada yada, all this kind of stuff.
And like Me Too backlash, and also like just how absolutely terrible the average person's understanding is of like what domestic abuse looks like. And like, you know, there's people who are survivors of domestic abuse that have like supported Depp. It's like,
there is a Michael Jackson level of sort of strange fever that surrounds him that is not like other folks. I don't.
Celebrity.
No, I'm saying not even just celebrity. It's like that extra sort of layer of something that some folks get that he somehow has got, and definitely has affected the interpretation of the whole thing. I will say, I think that that I would hope that this makes people also like think about like live streaming of trials and the whole things, and if this makes sense, and like the kind of spectacle that it does put out online, et cetera, because I think there should be cameras in courtrooms for a lot of things. I don't think they should be running like continuously, and definitely I think that it should be thought about a little more cleanly than it is.
We don't have them in this country.
Of any kind, right?
No. That's why you have like all of these kind of bizarre sketches of like courtrooms.
Yeah. Everyone loves a good courtroom sketch. I will say I am a fan of some cameras in courtrooms. For instance, I think that if people could get an eye on the Supreme Court and actually hear the things that these people say instead of just reading the transcripts, which are bananas enough, they would be like, oh, wow, term limits, maybe we should impeach that person for being too old to have the job and actually a crazy person. I think that people deserve a peek inside the judiciary from time to time.
When it's a high-profile celebrity case involving an issue that is already like really poorly understood,
this is beyond the pale.
There shouldn't be cameras, and also I think jury should be sequestered. Like I was astonished that the judge.
Oh yeah, I just learned this. That's crazy, right? So they're out there on Facebook, like
I thought
reading
they
all this
always
stuff,
were.
Right?
They're not.
I thought that was like the law. I thought it was like in the back of the Constitution.
Have we watched too much TV? I thought they all go
too
to
much
a motel
law on the
or
other
something.
one.
I don't know.
No, whenever they took a break, the judge was like, "Don't check social media." But like,
I did read this afterwards. Yeah, there was no official sequester. It was just like keep your nose out of
And one of the jurors admitted that his wife had texted him saying Amber Heard is psychotic. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just like any case involving violence against women is like nearly always plagued by just like really poor levels of understanding, a lot of like really toxic assumptions. And like you've got to be able to kind of manage that in some way in the trial, or like women like separate from this case, women will just never get justice because, things like Amber Heard like lied about some stuff and she was kind of mean, and like people are sort of using that as a reason to say that
right. Even though it's a perfectly normal thing to lie and be mean. I mean, if these things weren't okay, I don't know where I would be today. So it's like, anyway, sorry, I did open a can of worms, but actually, I'm going to take the worm and put it back in the robin here, because I'm curious to hear you. Yeah, that did make Julia's looking at me like I'm crazy because it didn't make any sense. But let me ask you how you thought the sexual assault subplot in The Dropout was handled, because they did kind of try to really elevate it as motivation in her life in a way that I actually hadn't seen in some of the other accounts that I had heard, and then brought it back at the end as kind of a bookend in a way that didn't totally feel organic to me, because it like what sort of wasn't threaded throughout, especially with her relationship, which seemed very rocky with Sonny. But what was your reaction to it?
I personally thought it was handled quite well. Because, like, the reality for, like, women, most women, I would say, or women that have experienced that kind of violence, is that it is just something that happens to you, and then, like, life goes on. And that's, like, the real tragedy of it. I think, for me, like, one of the things that I felt uncomfortable with Me Too was there was a lot of women kind of being like, I was shattered, I was devastated, it was the worst experience of my life. And I was like, was it? Because I feel like the truth, which is actually much worse than that, is that actually a lot of these like experiences are not shattering because you kind of have to become. This is society. Kind of, you have to become. They have to become normalized for like a lot of women, otherwise you just wouldn't leave the house. And so I quite like that it like clearly had some kind of effect on her, and like what her mum said to her perhaps like had some kind of effect on like how she moved through the world. But it was ultimately just this awful thing that happened to her, and then she kind of moved on. And I think I never really spoke about it, and I think that
until they did try to wrap it up at the end, which I think where I thought maybe it felt authentic, because they did all of a sudden have the kind of scene where it was like this. I can't now. I don't want to misremember what the conversation was, but she says something to her mom, and her mom's like, "I'm sorry."
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was a little bit labored. What did you think, Julia?
Because you're right, it's the banality of it, right?
Honestly, I didn't really think that much about it, that scene or the later scene. I didn't even really put together that had anything to do with the earlier part. I kind of forgot about it, which goes back to what you were saying, Ellie. It's just like, that's college, That's the thing. I mean, I don't know. People talk about like the reporting statistics and stuff, and it's just like, I think for most women, like when that stuff happens, it's like not even a thought in your head to report it. It's like, why on earth would you do it? Like, that's like a much worse thing to have to go through afterwards. Like, no, not interested. No thanks.
And I thought, I think I appreciated them putting it in and then like making you feel real sympathy for her as a viewer, because I think what it sort of communicated is like, you can be like a lying, manipulative billionaire and still be like the victim of sexual violence. Like,
Totally. In terms of not being perfect victims, she's definitely on the list of victims,
and also, victims are never perfect. Like, they never pay, it's almost always the situation where somebody,
And we see this, especially with not just women, but also with minorities who somehow get their mugshots put up while neo-Nazis will get their graduation photos.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're going to end this on a solemn little kind of blurk out thing. But, I mean, that's what the people don't come for us for enthusiasm. That's not why they come here. So I think I feel okay about it.
I thought they came for enthusiasm.
What am I enthusiastic about?
The end of capitalism?
Yeah. Yay.
I'm
and on
that
that note, the end of capitalism, let me thank Julia Doubleday and Ellie Mayo-Hagan for being here with us today. And we will see everyone.
Spite is a form of enthusiasm.
Spite is a... yes. Okay, we're going to... Xhevat, we're going to make a GIF. It's Julia's head, and it says, spite is a form of enthusiasm. And we're going to put that on the Twitter.
Maybe a mug.
Okay? Let it be done. Thanks so much for tuning into the committee program. We know you have many options when it comes to content consumption, and we appreciate your attention to this new season with new episodes on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 10 p.m. Central European Time. You can support the show by becoming a member on patreon.com/the committee program. You can follow committee on Twitter, /committee pro, on YouTube, the committee program, on Instagram, the committee program, on Facebook, the committee program, and you can visit the committee program company store at tpublic.com, the committee program shop. Special thanks, as always, to our team, Xhevat Kastrati, Fiamma Meli, Jacopo Castelletti, Forrest, Lovette, and committee's deputy director, Julia Doubleday. Look alive out there. It's later than you think.
It's the end of our broadcast day. Thanks for listening.
This was the 17th program in our second series. For more global infotainment from the committee program, click on the video screen right or screen left. Please like and subscribe to the committee program on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central European Time.